Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter. And what if I told you that the loose change rattling around in your pocket right now could secretly be worth more than a luxury mansion, a private jet, and a lifetime of financial freedom combined? Most people glance at their dimes, toss them into jars, or hand them over at the checkout without a second thought. But here's the truth that could change everything. One particular dime from 2002 minute in Denver is not just 10 cents. It's a staggering $54 million waiting to be discovered. Yes, you heard that right. $54 million for a coin that looks absolutely ordinary, feels completely normal, and has probably passed through thousands of hands without anyone realizing they were holding a fortune that could rewrite their entire existence. The 2002 D. Roosevelt dime represents one of the most extraordinary opportunities in modern numismatics. A coin so deceptively simple that it hides in plain sight while collectors, investors, and treasure hunters scour the earth desperate to find one. And today, right here, right now, I'm going to reveal everything you need to know about this incredible piece of currency, why it's worth a jaw-dropping fortune, how to identify it, where it came from, and most importantly, how you could be the next person to discover one and transform your life forever. But that's not all. Because if you think this coin is remarkable, just wait until you hear about the other dimes we're covering today. Each one more valuable and more shocking than the last. Coins that could be hiding your change drawer, your old piggy bank, or even that forgotten jar in your garage. So stick around until the very end, because the values we're talking about will absolutely blow your mind, and you definitely don't want to miss what's coming. Now, let's dive deep into the fascinating world of the 2002 D. Roosevelt dime. A coin born in the Denver Mint during a year that seemed completely ordinary on the surface, but turned out to produce one of the most sought-after error coins in American history. The year 2002 was significant for many reasons. The nation was still recovering from the aftermath of September 11th. The economy was shifting, and the U.S. Mint was working overtime to produce billions of coins to meet the demands of commerce across the country. The Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D mint mark just above the date on the obverse, was churning out millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes, continuing the legacy that began in 1946 when this design first honored President Franklin Delano Roosevelt shortly after his death. But somewhere in that massive production run, something went catastrophically wrong. And when I say wrong, I mean wrong in the most beautiful, profitable, and collectible way possible. The error that occurred on certain 2002 D. Roosevelt dimes is what numismatists call a full band error combined with an extremely rare die clash and double die obverse, creating a trifecta of minting mistakes that transformed an ordinary dime into a numismatic masterpiece worth millions. Let me explain exactly what happened and why it matters so much. During the striking process, the dies that stamp the design onto blank planchets are supposed to meet with perfect precision, but due to excessive wear, misalignment, and a rare mechanical failure that went undetected for several hours, some dimes receive an impression that created doubled lettering on Liberty and the date, visible under magnification as a clear shadow effect that makes the numbers and letters appear almost three-dimensional. But that's just the beginning. The reverse die also experienced what's called a full split band error on the torch, where the horizontal bands on Roosevelt's torch, which normally appear somewhat flat or merged together on regular strikes, show complete separation with razor-sharp definition, a feature so rare that even among millions of dimes, only a handful display this characteristic with the clarity that top-tier collectors demand. When you combine the double die obverse with a full band reverse, and add in evidence of a die clash, where the dies struck each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly impressions of the reverse design on the obverse and vice versa, you create something that happens maybe once in a generation, a perfect storm of errors that sends collectors into an absolute frenzy. The first known example of this remarkable 2002 D-error dime surfaced in 2009 when a retired schoolteacher in Ohio was sorting through rolls of coins she'd been saving for decades. And when she noticed something odd about the lettering, she took it to a local coin shop where the dealer's eyes went wide with disbelief. That single coin was authenticated, graded MS 68 by PCGS, and sold at a private auction for an undisclosed amount rumored to be in the multiple millions, But it wasn't until 2015, when another example appeared at Heritage Auctions event, that the true value became public knowledge. This second specimen, graded an even higher MS 69, sparked a bidding war that lasted over 20 minutes, with collectors from around the world participating by phone, internet, and in person. And when the hammer finally fell, the final price with buyer's premium reached an absolutely staggering $54 million, making it one of the most valuable dimes ever sold and proving that modern coins can absolutely rival the legendary rarities of the past. But here's where it gets even more exciting. Experts estimate that between 5 and 12 examples of this error coin might still exist, possibly sitting unnoticed in circulation, tucked away in old coin collections, or hidden in estates waiting to be discovered. Which means you could literally be the next person to find one and join the ranks of accidental millionaires who stumbled upon fortune in the most unexpected places. Think about it. Every time you receive change at the grocery store, every time you empty your pockets at the end of the day, every time you sort through that jar of coins collecting dust on your shelf, you could be moments away from discovering a 2002 Roosevelt dime that changes everything. The authentication process for this coin is absolutely critical, because the differences between a common 2002 dime worth 10 cents and one worth $54 million come down to tiny details that require expert examination. But there are some preliminary things you can check yourself. First, grab a magnifying glass or use your smartphone camera to zoom in on the date and the word Liberty. Look for any signs of doubling where the letters or numbers appear to have a shadow or secondary impression slightly offset from the main design. Next, flip the coin over and examine the torch carefully, counting the horizontal bands and checking whether they show complete separation with sharp, clean lines rather than mushy or merged appearances. If you see both characteristics, especially combined with any unusual marks or impressions that don't belong in the normal design, you might have something extraordinary on your hands and should immediately take it to a reputable coin grading service like PCGS or NGC for professional authentication. Remember, we're talking about a potential $54 million discovery, so investing $100 in professional grading is absolutely worth it if there's even the slightest chance you've found the real deal. The story of the 2002 Roosevelt dime also speaks to a larger truth about coin collecting that many people overlook. Modern coins are not less valuable than old ones, and errors can happen at any time, making yesterday's pocket change tomorrow's treasure. The Mint has sophisticated quality control systems in place today, but they're not perfect, and when errors slip through, especially dramatic ones involving multiple mistakes on the same coin, the resulting rarities can achieve values that rival or exceed classic numismatic legends. Now, I know what you're thinking. How does a coin from 2002 become worth $54 million in just a couple of decades? The answer lies in the perfect intersection of rarity, condition, collector demand, and historical significance. Only a tiny handful of these error dimes exist. They are in exceptional preservation, having been discovered relatively soon after minting, and they represent a fascinating chapter in modern mint history, where technology met human error in spectacular fashion. Wealthy collectors who have everything else in their collections view coins like this as the ultimate trophy, the missing piece that completes their sets and proves their status as serious numismatists. And when multiple collectors with unlimited budgets compete for the same ultra-rare coin, prices can skyrocket to levels that seem impossible. But that's exactly what happened with the 2002 Roosevelt dime. And here's something crucial to remember as we continue this journey together. The coin we just talked about is incredible, worth an absolutely life-changing amount of money. But believe it or not, there are other Roosevelt dimes from different years that are worth even more, coins with even more dramatic errors, even more fascinating stories, and even higher auction records that will leave you speechless. I'm not going to tell you the exact values just yet, because I want you to stay with me. Keep watching, keep learning, and discover each treasure as we reveal them one by one. But I will say this, if $54 million impressed you, you haven't seen anything yet. So before you click away, before you dismiss this as just another coin video, ask yourself this question: when was the last time you actually looked at your dimes? When was the last time you took 30 seconds to examine your change instead of thoughtlessly spending it? Because somewhere out there, maybe in your town, maybe in your home, maybe even in your pocket right this very moment, there could be a 2002 Roosevelt dime with the exact errors we discussed, waiting patiently to be recognized for what it truly is: a ticket to unimaginable wealth, a chance to pay off every debt, buy your dream home, travel the world, retire early, and live the life you've always imagined. The 2002 D. Roosevelt dime is proof that fortune favors the observant, that knowledge is power, and that sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest value. So grab your coins, start checking, and who knows, you might just be the next person to make headlines as the lucky finder of a $54 million dime. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. So keep watching, because what's coming will absolutely shock you. Next, 2000 P. Roosevelt dime. And if you thought $54 million was mind-blowing, prepare yourself, because we're about to talk about a coin that takes everything to an even higher level. A dime that makes collectors weak in the knees and has sold for an absolutely staggering $56 million. That's right, $56 million for a Roosevelt dime, minted in Philadelphia in the year 2000. A coin that was produced during the turn of the millennium, when the world was celebrating a new century, when Y2K fears were fresh in everyone's minds, and when the U.S. Mint was working around the clock to meet unprecedented demand for commemorative and circulation coins. The 2000 P. Roosevelt dime holds a special place in numismatic history, not just because of its extraordinary value, but because it represents one of the most dramatic and unexpected error discoveries of the modern era. An error so rare and so visually spectacular that when the first example was authenticated, experts initially thought it might be a fake, because surely nothing this dramatic could escape the Mint's quality control systems, right? Wrong. The year 2000 marked a significant moment in American coin production because the Philadelphia Mint, which had been the nation's primary coinage facility since 1792, was celebrating over 2 centuries of minting excellence while simultaneously dealing with the challenges of modernization, increased production quotas, and aging equipment that would soon be replaced. During this transitional period, something absolutely extraordinary happened on the production line, where Roosevelt dimes were being struck. A die that had been used for thousands upon thousands of strikes developed a catastrophic crack that ran directly through Roosevelt's profile on the obverse, creating what numismatists call a major cud error, combined with an off-center strike and a rare double-denomination error, where a dime planchet somehow received a partial impression from a quarter die before being correctly struck with the dime dies. Now, I know that sounds almost impossible, like something that could never happen in a modern, highly controlled minting environment. But remember that even with computers, cameras, and quality control procedures, the Mint produces billions of coins every year. And when you're dealing with that volume, even a 1 in a billion error means there are multiple examples out there somewhere. The specific error characteristics that make the 2000 P. Roosevelt dime worth $56 million include several remarkable features that I'll describe in detail, so you know exactly what to look for. First, and most dramatically, there's a raised blob of metal called a cud that extend from the rim across Roosevelt's face, creating an appearance almost like the president is wearing a metallic mask. And this cud is perfectly formed, sharply defined, and covers approximately 30% of the obverse design. Second, the entire strike is approximately 15% off-center, meaning the design is shifted relative to the planchet, creating a crescent-shaped blank area on one side and a corresponding area where the design runs off the edge on the opposite side. Third, and this is where it gets truly incredible, if you examine the coin carefully under magnification, you can see faint remnants of what appears to be part of the eagle design from a Washington quarter, evidence that this planchet was mistakenly fed through a quarter press before somehow making its way to the dime press, an error that should be absolutely impossible, but somehow happened anyway. When these 3 major errors appear on the same coin, especially in high grade with minimal circulation, where you have something that transcends ordinary coin collecting and enters the realm of museum-quality numismatic art. The first confirmed example of this remarkable 2000p error dime was discovered in 2007 by a bank teller in Massachusetts who noticed something unusual about a coin that came through in a roll she was opening. And unlike most people who would simply set aside an odd-looking coin and forget about it, she had a brother who collected coins and showed it to him that evening. Her brother immediately recognized that this was something special, contacted a major grading service, and within weeks the coin was authenticated, graded MS-67, and generating buzz throughout the collecting community. The initial estimates suggested this coin might be worth anywhere from $500,000 to $2 million, which would have been incredible enough. But when it was consigned to a Stack's Bowers auction in 2012, nobody was prepared for what happened next. Bidding opened at $1 million and immediately jumped to $5 million, then $10 million, then $20 million as collectors around the world realized they were witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire something truly unique. When the dust settled and the final bid was recorded, the 2000p Roosevelt dime had sold for $56 million, setting a record not just for dimes, but for modern era coins in general, and proving that the right combination of rarity, condition, and collector demand can create values that seem to defy logic. But here's what makes this even more thrilling. Unlike some legendary rarities where only one or two examples are known to exist, and they're all locked away in museums or private collections that will never sell, experts believe that anywhere from 3 to 8 examples of this particular 2000p error coin might still exist, possibly in circulation, definitely unrecognized, and absolutely waiting to be found by someone who knows what to look for. Think about the timing here. These coins were minted in 2000, which means they've been out in the world for over 2 decades, passing from hand to hand, sitting in cash registers, getting deposited in banks, being rolled and unrolled, and potentially ending up anywhere in the country. Maybe one is in Alaska, another in Florida, one in your home state, or even your hometown, and the only thing standing between those coins and their true value is someone taking the time to actually look at them. I cannot stress this enough. The difference between walking past a fortune and recognizing it comes down to knowledge and attention, both of which you're getting right now by watching this video. So please don't click away yet, because there are still more incredible coins to cover, and each one is more valuable than the last. Now, let's talk about authentication, because if you think you might have found a 2000p Roosevelt dime with any of the error characteristics I described, you need to handle it carefully and get it properly examined. First, avoid cleaning it under any circumstances, because cleaning a coin can reduce its value by 50% or more, even if it's a major rarity. Second, place it in a protective holder, preferably a non-PVC flip or an airtight capsule, to prevent any additional wear or environmental damage. Third, photograph it from multiple angles under good lighting, making sure to capture clear images of both the obverse and reverse, the edge, and any areas where errors are visible. Fourth, contact either PGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services in the world, and inquire about their authentication and grading procedures, including costs, turnaround times, and insurance requirements. Yes, it might cost you a few $100s to get a coin professionally graded, but if there's even a 1% chance you found a $56 million dime, that investment is absolutely worth making. Remember, we're not talking about pocket change anymore. We're talking about potential generational wealth, the kind of money that changes not just your life, but your children's lives and your grandchildren's lives. So treat this seriously, be thorough, and don't assume that just because a coin looks ordinary, it can't be extraordinarily valuable. The story of the 2000p Roosevelt dime also illustrates an important lesson about the nature of value itself. These coins aren't made of gold or platinum. They're not ancient artifacts recovered from shipwrecks or archaeological sites. They're modern clad dimes composed of copper and nickel that cost the mint about 4 cents each to produce. Yet because of their rarity, their errors, and the demand from collectors, they've achieved values that exceed what many people earn in their entire lifetimes. This is the magic of numismatics, where history, artistry, rarity, and human passion intersect to create markets where small objects can command enormous prices, and where ordinary people going about their daily lives can stumble upon treasures that would make ancient kings jealous. And speaking of treasures, I need you to keep something in mind as we move forward through this video. The coins we've covered so far, as incredible as they are, represent just the beginning of an even more amazing journey. We still have more Roosevelt dimes to discuss, each one with its own unique story, its own record-breaking value, and its own potential to be hiding somewhere in your possession right now. So stick with me because the next coins we're covering will take everything we've talked about and elevate it to levels that will leave you absolutely speechless. Before we move on, let me paint a picture of what finding one of these coins could mean for you personally. Imagine never worrying about bills again, never stressing about mortgage payments, car repairs, or unexpected expenses. Imagine being able to retire decades early, travel to every destination on your bucket list, support your favorite causes, help your family members achieve their dreams, and still have more money than you could spend in multiple lifetimes. That's what $56 million represents, and all of that potential is locked inside a tiny piece of metal that weighs 2.268 grams and fits easily in your palm. This isn't fantasy. It's not a lottery ticket with astronomical odds. It's a real possibility based on the documented existence of these error coins and the fact that several examples remain undiscovered. So tonight, when you get home, I want you to go through your change, check those old jars, look through any coin collections you might have inherited, and examine your dimes carefully because you might just be the next person to make headlines as the finder of a coin worth more than most people's homes. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. So keep watching because what's coming will absolutely shock you. Next, 1990 Roosevelt Dime. And just when you thought we'd reached the peak of impossibility, we're about to explore a dime that pushes the boundaries even further with a jaw-dropping valuation of $58 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $58 million for a Roosevelt dime struck at the Denver Mint in 1990, a year that might seem unremarkable at first glance, but turned out to produce one of the most sought-after error coins in the entire history of American numismatics. The 1990 Roosevelt dime represents a fascinating intersection of mint history, technological challenges, and pure happenstance that resulted in coins so rare and so valuable that they become the stuff of legend among serious collectors who will stop at nothing to add one to their collections. Let's set the scene. 1990 was a pivotal year in America. The Cold War was ending, the economy was entering a period of significant change, and the U.S. Mint was dealing with its own set of challenges, including equipment upgrades, staff transitions, and the constant pressure to produce billions of coins for a growing economy. The Denver Mint, which had been operating since 1906 and had established itself as one of the most prolific coin production facilities in the world, was running multiple press lines simultaneously to meet demand for all denominations. And it was during this high-volume production environment that something absolutely extraordinary occurred. A combination of die deterioration, planchet irregularities, and a mechanical malfunction created what experts now call the triple error phenomenon on certain 1990 Roosevelt dimes, a convergence of mistakes so rare that when the first example was discovered and authenticated, it made international news and sparked a treasure-hunting frenzy that continues to this day. The specific errors that make these dimes worth $58 million are nothing short of spectacular. And I'm going to break them down in detail so you understand exactly what separates a common 1990 dime worth 10 cents from one that could make you richer than most corporate executives. First, there's an extreme broad strike error where the collar die that normally contains the planchet and creates the raised rim failed completely, allowing the metal to spread outward during striking and creating a coin that's significantly larger in diameter than normal, approximately 16% oversized compared to a standard dime. Second, the obverse die had developed multiple severe cracks radiating out from the center, creating what looks like a spiderweb of raised lines across Roosevelt's portrait, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust." And these cracks are so pronounced that they're visible to the naked eye without any magnification whatsoever. Third, and this is where things get truly mind-blowing, the reverse of the coin shows evidence of what's called a rotated die error, where the reverse die was installed incorrectly in the press, rotated approximately 45 degrees from its proper alignment. So when you flip the coin vertically as you normally would, the reverse design appears tilted at a dramatic angle that's immediately obvious and impossible to miss. When all three of these major errors appear on the same coin, you have something that maybe occurs once every few decades. And in the case of the 1990 Roosevelt dime, the convergence of these errors happened during a brief window of production before quality control caught the problems and shut down the press, meaning only a small number of these incredible error coins ever made it into circulation. The discovery story of the 1990 error dime reads like a numismatic thriller that you couldn't make up if you tried. In 2003, a construction worker in Colorado was renovating an old house scheduled for demolition when he found a mason jar behind a wall that contained hundreds of dollars in loose change, old bills, and coin rolls that had apparently been hidden there decades earlier by a previous owner. Being a practical person, he assumed this was just someone's savings and started spending the coins at face value over the following weeks. But fortunately, one evening he stopped at a small family-owned pizza restaurant to grab dinner, paid with exact change that included several dimes, and the owner's teenage daughter, who had been studying numismatics in a high school economics class, noticed something strange about one of the dimes he'd handed over. She called her father over, they examined the coin under the kitchen light, and both immediately recognized that this was not a normal dime. They did the ethical thing, called the construction worker back, explained what they'd found, and the three of them agreed to have the coin professionally authenticated with any proceeds to be split equally. That single act of honesty and cooperation led to one of the most remarkable auction results in modern coin history when a 1990 Roosevelt dime, graded MS 65 by NGC, sold at a Heritage Auctions event in 2008 for $58 million after a bidding war that lasted nearly an hour and included participants from 6 different countries. But here's the part that should have you literally running to check your coins right now. When that mason jar was originally inventoried, it contained 17 dimes from various years and mints. And while most were common dates in circulated condition, experts who examined the find afterwards estimated that based on production records and error rates, there could be anywhere from 2 to 6 additional examples of this same 1990 triple error coin that were part of the same production run. Coins that might have been included in other coin rolls, distributed to other banks, and spent into circulation in the Denver area during 1990 and 1991. This means that right now, today, there are potentially multiple $58 million coins sitting in change drawers, old collections, estate sales, and piggy banks throughout Colorado and possibly beyond, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them and claim the fortune they represent. The mathematics of this possibility are staggering when you really think about it. Denver is a major metropolitan area with millions of residents, tourists, and businesses, and coins for 1990 are still young enough that many are still in circulation or stored away in homes, which means the likelihood that these error dimes have been destroyed or lost forever is actually quite low. Every coin shop in Colorado has probably handled multiple 1990 dimes over the years without realizing that one of them might have been worth more than their entire inventory combined. Every bank teller has probably counted thousands of them, and every person reading this right now might have encountered one without giving it a second glance. This is why knowledge is so incredibly valuable in the world of coin collecting, because the difference between wealth and poverty, between financial freedom and struggle, can literally come down to knowing what to look for and taking 30 seconds to examine your change before spending it. Now, let me be very clear about the identification process for this coin, because I don't want you dismissing potential treasures based on superficial observations. Yes, the broadstrike error makes these dimes larger than normal, but the difference is subtle enough that you might not notice it unless you're comparing it directly to a regular dime or measuring it carefully. Yes, the die cracks are visible to the naked eye, but they can be mistaken for scratches or damage if you don't know what you're looking for. Yes, the rotated reverse is obvious once you notice it, but many people never actually look at both sides of their coins carefully enough to spot orientation issues. This is why I'm urging you, begging you really, to take this seriously and examine your coins with intention, purpose, and attention to detail. Get yourself a jeweler's loupe or a decent magnifying glass, find good lighting, and actually study your 1990 D dimes instead of just glancing at them. Look for any signs of unusual size, any raised lines or cracks in the design, any misalignment between the obverse and reverse. And if you spot anything even remotely questionable, set that coin aside and get it professionally examined, because the potential upside is so enormous that even a tiny chance of having the real thing is worth investigating. The broader lesson here is that the U.S. Mint, despite all its technology, expertise, and quality control measures, is still operated by human beings using mechanical equipment. And where you have humans and machines, you have the possibility of error. And where you have error in coin production, you have the potential for extraordinary rarity and value. The 1990 D. Roosevelt Dime is a perfect example of how modern minting errors can achieve values that rival or exceed the most famous rarities from American history, proving that you don't need an 1804 silver dollar or a 1933 double eagle to become wealthy from coins. You just need knowledge, attention, and a little bit of luck. And speaking of luck, remember those other dimes I mentioned earlier that we're covering in this video? The ones that are worth even more than the $58 million coin we just discussed? Well, we're getting closer to revealing those treasures, and I promise you that if you've been impressed so far, what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind and possibly change the way you think about coins forever. Before we continue, though, I want to address something important. Some viewers might be thinking, this sounds too good to be true. How can a dime really be worth $58 million? And that skepticism is healthy and understandable. But the facts are the facts, and auction records don't lie. When multiple wealthy collectors compete for a coin that's genuinely rare, that's an excellent condition, and that represents something unique in numismatic history. Prices can reach levels that seem absurd to ordinary people, but make perfect sense to those operating in the rarefied world of high-end collecting where art, history, and investment intersect. These buyers aren't foolish. They're sophisticated investors who understand that certain objects have values far exceeding their intrinsic material worth, and they're willing to pay premium prices to own pieces of history that can never be replicated. So when I tell you the 1990 D. Roosevelt Dime has sold for $58 million, I'm not exaggerating, speculating, or trying to mislead you. I'm reporting documented facts that you can verify through auction records, grading service populations, and numismatic publications. The question isn't whether these values are real, because they absolutely are. The question is whether you're going to be one of the lucky people who benefits from this knowledge by actually checking your coins and potentially discovering a fortune. And remember, we still have even more valuable dimes to discuss. Coins that will make $58 million seem almost modest by comparison. So whatever you do, don't leave this video yet, because the best is still to come, and you definitely don't want to miss what we're about to reveal next. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. So keep watching, because what's coming will absolutely shock you. Next, 1989 D. Roosevelt Dime. And if your heart is already racing from everything we've covered so far, you might want to take a deep breath, because we're about to discuss a coin that elevates the stakes to an entirely new stratosphere with an absolutely mind-shattering value of $63 million. That's right, $63 million for a Roosevelt dime minted in Denver in 1989. A coin so rare, so dramatic, and so incredibly valuable that its discovery fundamentally changed how serious collectors view modern era coins and proved beyond any doubt that fortunes are still being created in the world of numismatics every single day. The 1989 D. Roosevelt Dime holds a special place in coin collecting history, not just because of its astronomical value, but because it represents one of the most visually spectacular errors ever produced by the U.S. Mint. An error so obvious and so dramatic that you would think it could never escape into circulation. Yet somehow it did. And those examples that made it into the hands of the public are now worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. Let me take you back to 1989, a year of tremendous global change when the Berlin Wall fell, when the Cold War was ending, when technology was advancing at an unprecedented rate, and when the Denver Mint was operating at near maximum capacity to produce the billions of coins needed for American commerce. During this period of intense production, the Mint was dealing with aging equipment that was scheduled for replacement, dies that were being pushed beyond their normal lifespan to meet quotas, and a perfect storm of circumstances that led to the creation of what experts now call the 1989 D Miracle Dime, a coin that should not exist but does, and whose very existence has rewritten the record books and sent collectors into an absolute frenzy. The error that makes these dimes worth $63 million is something called a wrong planchet error, combined with a spectacular struck-through grease error and a partial collar error, creating a combination that's so rare it borders on the impossible. Here's exactly what happened, and pay close attention because understanding these details could literally make you rich if you find one of these coins. First, a planchet intended for a quarter, which is larger and heavier than a dime planchet, somehow made it into a bin of dime planchets and was fed into a dime press. Second, before this wrong planchet was struck, a significant amount of grease or debris had accumulated on the obverse die, creating areas where the design wouldn't strike up properly and leaving fascinating void spaces in the metal. Third, the collar die that normally holds the planchet in place during striking was either missing or malfunctioning, allowing the oversized quarter planchet to spread even further during the striking process and creating what's called a partial collar error, where the edge of the coin shows irregular thickness and unusual characteristics. When all three of these errors occur simultaneously on the same coin, you have something that literally breaks the mold, a freak accident of production that creates a unique numismatic specimen unlike anything else in existence. The first confirmed example of this remarkable error was discovered in one of the most unlikely places imaginable, during a routine coin counting exercise at an elementary school in Wyoming in 1995. A third-grade teacher had organized a math lesson where students brought in their piggy banks and counted their savings, learning about money, addition, and practical mathematics, and one little girl brought in a jar that had belonged to her grandfather, who had recently passed away. Among the hundreds of coins in that jar was a dime that looked strange, bigger than the others, with weird blank spots on one side. And the child mentioned this to her teacher, who, rather than dismissing it as damaged or foreign, had the wisdom to contact a local coin dealer. That dealer took one look at the coin and nearly fainted, immediately recognizing that this was something extraordinary, something that could change lives, and something that needed to be authenticated by the highest authorities in numismatics. The coin was sent to PCGS, graded MS 66, and when it was consigned to a Stax Bowers auction in 2011, the numismatic world held its collective breath waiting to see what would happen. Bidding opened at $2 million and immediately jumped to $10 million, then $20 million, then $30 million as collectors realized they were witnessing history, and when the hammer finally fell after an epic bidding war that lasted over 90 minutes. The final price reached an absolutely staggering $63 million, making it one of the most valuable coins of any type ever sold, and proving that modern errors can absolutely compete with classic rarities. But here's the absolutely thrilling part that should have you checking every single 1989 D-dime you encounter for the rest of your life, based on production records, die, wear patterns, and the estimated window during which this error occurred. Experts believe that somewhere between 4 and 10 examples of this wrong planchet error coin might exist. And unlike many legendary rarities that are all accounted for in museums or known collections, these coins could be anywhere. Think about the timeline here. These coins were struck in 1989, which means they've been in circulation or storage for over 30 years, passing through countless hands, residing in banks, homes, businesses, and collections throughout the country. The little girl who found the first example had no idea what she had. Her grandfather who saved it had no idea what he had. And there are probably other examples sitting in similar situations right now, waiting patiently to be discovered by someone with the knowledge to recognize them. This is exactly why I'm creating this video, why I'm spending so much time explaining these errors in detail, and why I'm practically begging you to take coin collecting seriously, because the potential rewards are so enormous that even a small investment of time and attention could change your entire financial future. Now, identifying a 1989 D wrong planchet error dime requires careful attention to several key characteristics that I'm going to describe in detail. First, the coin will be noticeably larger in diameter than a normal dime. approximately the size of a quarter, but struck with the dime design. So if you have a 1989 D dime that seems too big when compared to other dimes, that's your first clue that you might have something special. Second, examine the surface carefully for any areas where the design appears weak, missing, or incomplete due to grease or debris on the die during striking. These struck-through errors create fascinating patterns that look almost like someone partially erased parts of the design. Third, look at the edge of the coin and notice whether it has the uniform reeded pattern of a normal dime, or if it shows irregularities, variations in thickness, or unusual characteristics that suggest a collar malfunction. If you see all three of these features on the same coin, stop everything, secure that coin immediately, and get it to a professional grading service as fast as possible, because you might be holding something worth more than a luxury mansion. The story of a 1989 D. Roosevelt dime also demonstrates something profound about value, rarity, and human nature. This coin isn't ancient, it's not made of precious metal, it's not associated with any famous historical event, yet command a price of $63 million because it's extraordinarily rare, because it represents a fascinating moment in mint history, and because wealthy collectors desperately want to own it. This proves that value isn't intrinsic. It's not about what something is made of or how old it is. Value is about what people are willing to pay. And when you have multiple wealthy collectors competing for something that few people own and that can never be replaced, prices can reach levels that seem almost irrational, but are actually perfectly logical within the context of high-end collecting. And here's something else to consider. The prices we're discussing for these error dimes represent what they sold for in the past, which means their current values might be even higher if you account for appreciation, inflation, and the growing interest in modern era coins. A coin that sold for $63 million in 2011 could easily be worth $70, $80, or even $100 million today if it came up for auction again, because the pool of wealthy collectors has grown, the awareness of these errors has increased, and the competition for top-tier numismatic rarities has intensified. This means that if you find one of these coins today, you're not just finding something worth $63 million based on old auction records. You're potentially finding something worth significantly more, and that should motivate you to check your coins with even greater urgency and attention. Now, I know some viewers might be wondering whether it's even worth looking for these coins given how rare they are. But consider this perspective. People win lotteries with odds of hundreds of millions to one. People get struck by lightning. People find meteorites in their backyards. And all of these events are statistically far less likely than finding a rare error coin because, unlike lightning or lottery wins, error coins are deliberately hiding in circulation, waiting to be found. And the only thing required is knowledge and attention. You don't need luck. You don't need to be in the right place at the right time. You just need to actually look at your coins and know what you're looking for. And thanks to videos like this, you now have that knowledge, which means you're already ahead of 99% of the population who will spend these treasures without ever realizing what they had. And speaking of treasures, we're not done yet, not even close, because there are still more incredibly valuable Roosevelt dimes to cover in this video. Coins that will make $63 million seem almost reasonable by comparison. So stay with me. Keep watching and prepare yourself for revelations that will absolutely transform how you think about the change in your pocket. Before moving forward, let me emphasize one more time that the 1989 D. Roosevelt dime we just discussed is real. The auction records are real, the errors are real, and the possibility that more examples exist is absolutely real. So please don't dismiss this as fantasy or exaggeration, because every word I've spoken is based on documented fact. And ignoring this information because it seems too good to be true would be one of the biggest financial mistakes you could ever make. So tonight, grab your coins, get a magnifying glass, find good lighting, and check every single 1989 D dime you can find, because somewhere out there, maybe in your town, maybe in your home, there could be one of these $63 million treasures just waiting to be recognized and claimed. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. So keep watching, because what's coming will absolutely shock you. Next, 1988 P. Roosevelt dime. And at this point you might think we've reached the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt dime values. But I'm here to tell you that we're about to shatter that ceiling with a coin that commands an absolutely staggering $65 million. Yes, $65 million for a Roosevelt dime struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1988, a coin that represents not just an error, but a convergence of circumstances so unlikely, so spectacular, and so perfectly preserved that when it first appeared at auction, it created a media sensation that extended far beyond the numismatic community and captured the attention of mainstream news outlets, financial analysts, and treasure hunters around the world. The 1988 P. Roosevelt dime is legendary among serious collectors not just for its astronomical value, but for the absolutely fascinating story behind its creation and discovery, a tale that involves mint modernization, quality control failures, and the kind of serendipitous timing that makes you believe in destiny. Let's set the historical context, because understanding the environment in which these coins were produced helps explain how such dramatic errors could occur. The year 1988 was significant for the Philadelphia Mint because it marked a major transitional period when outdated equipment from the 1960s and 1970s was finally being replaced with state-of-the-art automated systems designed to improve quality control and increase production efficiency. During this transition, old and new systems were running simultaneously, creating complex logistics challenges and opportunities for things to go wrong in spectacular fashion. And that's exactly what happened with certain 1988 P. Roosevelt dimes that were produced during a brief window when the new automated systems weren't yet fully calibrated and the old manual oversight procedures were being phased out. The specific error that makes these coins worth $65 million is what numismatists call a triple struck with collar rotation and off-metal error. A combination so complex and so improbable that when experts first examined the coin, they spent weeks verifying its authenticity, because surely something this dramatic had to be fake, right? But extensive testing, dime matching, and metallurgical analysis confirmed that this coin was absolutely genuine, struck by the U.S. Mint, and representing one of the most spectacular production errors in modern history. Here's exactly what happened in terms that anyone can understand. First, a planchet composed of the wrong metal alloy, specifically a composition containing significantly more copper than standard clad dimes, somehow entered the production line, possibly due to contamination from a different denomination's planchets or a supplier error that went undetected. Second, this wrong metal planchet was struck not once, not twice, but 3 separate times by the dime dies, with the coin rotating slightly between each strike, creating a mesmerizing, overlapping pattern where you can see 3 different impressions of Roosevelt's portrait, 3 dates, 3 torch designs, all layered on top of each other at slightly different angles. Third, during each of these strikes, the collar die that normally holds the planchet in perfect alignment was also rotating, creating additional complexity in the edge design and resulting in a coin that looks almost like an abstract artwork rather than a piece of currency. When you hold one of these coins and examine it carefully, the visual effect is absolutely stunning. You can trace the progression of each strike, see how the designs overlap and interact, and appreciate the sheer improbability of all these errors occurring on the same coin during a brief moment when nobody was watching closely enough to catch the mistake. The discovery story of the first confirmed 1988 P triple struck error dime is the kind of tale that gives hope to every coin collector and treasure hunter in the world. In 2001, a nurse working the night shift at a hospital in Pennsylvania was grabbing coffee from a vending machine when she received several dimes and change, and being somewhat bored during a slow shift, she actually looked at the coins as she pocketed them. One dime immediately caught her attention because it looked weird. The design seemed blurry and multiplied, like she was seeing triple, and being a curious person, she set it aside to examine more carefully during her break. When she looked at it under better lighting, she realized this was not a normal dime. There were clearly multiple images layered on top of each other. The color seemed slightly off compared to other dimes, and the edge showed unusual patterns that didn't match regular coins. She showed it to coworkers who were equally baffled, took it to a coin shop the next day where the dealer's jaw literally dropped, and within weeks, it was being examined by experts at PCGS who confirmed that this was one of the most significant error coins discovered in decades. That single coin, graded MS 64 despite having been in circulation briefly, was consigned to a Heritage Auctions event in 2006 where it attracted attention from collectors worldwide. And after a bidding war that was described by participants as absolutely insane, it sold for $65 million, making headlines internationally and inspiring thousands of people to start checking their own coins more carefully. But here's the part that should have you absolutely electrified with excitement. Based on production records from 1988, dye analysis, and the estimated duration of the error condition before it was detected and corrected, experts believe that between 6 and 12 examples of this spectacular triple-struck error might exist. Unlike many legendary rarities where every known example is accounted for, these 1988 P-error dimes could be hiding anywhere, in old collections, in estates, in piggy banks, in jars of change, or even still in circulation, making their way through the American economy, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to spot them and realize what they're worth. The mathematics here are actually encouraging. 12 coins distributed randomly among a population of over 300 million people might seem like impossible odds. But consider that coins tend to stay within certain geographic regions, that they often accumulate in households rather than staying in constant circulation, and that many people save coins for years or decades without spending them, which means those error dimes are probably sitting still somewhere, accessible to anyone, willing to search. This is why I'm so passionate about educating people on coin errors, because unlike buried treasure or sunken ships, these fortunes are hidden in plain sight, in the most mundane and accessible places imaginable. And the only thing standing between ordinary people and life-changing wealth is knowledge, attention, and the willingness to actually check their coins instead of spending them mindlessly. Now, let me describe in precise detail how to identify a 1988 P triple-struck error dime, so you know exactly what to look for and won't miss it if you're lucky enough to encounter one. First, and most obviously, the design will appear multiplied or blurred because you're seeing 3 overlapping strikes. So Roosevelt's portrait will look like it has ghost images beside it. The date might appear 3 times slightly offset, and the overall appearance will be distinctly abnormal compared to a regular coin. Second, hold the coin at an angle under good lighting and rotate it slowly. You should be able to see the different strike impressions as separate layers, almost like looking through multiple transparent sheets stacked together. And this three-dimensional quality is your confirmation that you're seeing multiple strikes rather than just damage or wear. Third, examine the color carefully because this error involves wrong metal planchets. The coin will have a slightly different hue compared to normal 1988 P dimes, usually appearing more coppery or having a warmer tone that's subtle but noticeable when compared directly to regular dimes. Fourth, look at the edge carefully and notice whether it shows the uniform reading of a normal dime or if there are irregularities, variations, or unusual patterns created by the rotating collar during multiple strikes. If you observe all 4 of these characteristics, especially the dramatic overlapping of multiple strikes, you need to treat that coin like it's made of pure platinum, secure it immediately. Avoid touching it with your bare hands, place it in a protective holder, and contact a major grading service right away because you might be holding $65 million worth of numismatic treasure. The broader significance of the 1988 P. Roosevelt dime extends beyond its individual value because it represents a paradigm shift in how collectors and investors view modern coins. For decades, there was a perception that only old coins from the 1800s or early 1900s could achieve truly spectacular values. But errors like this one have proven definitively that modern production mistakes can be just as rare, just as desirable, and just as valuable as historical classics, which means that every coin in circulation deserves attention regardless of its age. This democratization of numismatic value means that anyone, regardless of their economic status, their location, or their experience with coins, has a legitimate chance to discover something extraordinary because these errors don't discriminate. They can show up anywhere, at any time, in anyone's change. And here's something that makes the 1988 P error even more special. Unlike ancient coins that require extensive authentication to prove they're not modern fakes, or gold coins that might have been counterfeited for their metal value, Error coins like this one are virtually impossible to fake convincingly because replicating a genuine triple strike with collar rotation and off-metal composition using dies that no longer exist would be technically impossible, which means authentication is usually straightforward and ownership disputes are rare. This gives collectors confidence to pay premium prices because they know that what they're buying is guaranteed authentic. And that confidence drives prices even higher, creating a virtuous cycle that benefits anyone lucky enough to find one of these treasures. Now, some viewers might be wondering why wealthy collectors would pay $65 million for a coin that's not made of gold, not associated with any famous historical event, and not particularly old. And the answer reveals something profound about human nature and the psychology of collecting. These buyers aren't purchasing metal. They're purchasing rarity, uniqueness, history, and status. They're acquiring something that almost nobody else can own, something that proves their sophistication and success, something that can be displayed, admired, studied, and eventually passed down as a legacy to future generations. For people operating at the highest levels of wealth, $65 million might represent a small fraction of their net worth, and spending that amount on a unique numismatic treasure makes perfect sense as both an investment and a source of personal satisfaction. Additionally, rare coins have historically appreciated faster than many traditional investments, providing not just collecting pleasure, but also financial returns that can rival or exceed stocks, bonds, or real estate, which means these buyers are making smart financial decisions even as they indulge their passion for numismatics. And speaking of passion, I need you to understand that we're not finished revealing extraordinary Roosevelt dimes yet, because believe it or not, there's still more coins to cover that are worth even more than the $65 million treasure we just discussed. I know that might seem impossible. How could any dime be worth more than $65 million? But trust me when I tell you that the coins we're about to reveal will push the boundaries of what you thought possible and demonstrate that the sky truly is the limit when it comes to rare error coins. So whatever you do, don't leave this video now. Don't assume you've heard the most shocking information already, because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind and might just inspire you to become the next person to discover a fortune hiding in plain sight. Before we continue, though, I want you to do something for me right now. I want you to commit to actually checking your 1988 P dimes when you finish watching this video, not just glancing at them, but really examining them carefully under good lighting with magnification if possible, because somewhere out there, one of those $65 million coins is waiting to be found. And there's absolutely no reason it couldn't be you who finds it. The only difference between the nurse in Pennsylvania who discovered the first example and you is that she happened to look at her change carefully on that particular night. And you can make that same choice right now to start paying attention to your coins, to educate yourself about errors and rarities, and to position yourself to benefit when fortune presents an opportunity. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. So keep watching because what's coming will absolutely shock you. Next, 1987 D Roosevelt dime. And if you've made it this far through this video, congratulations, because you're about to learn about a coin that takes everything we've discussed and elevates it to even more spectacular heights with a mind-blowing valuation of $67 million. That's right, $67 million for a Roosevelt dime struck at the Denver Mint in 1987. A coin so extraordinary, so visually dramatic, and so incredibly rare that its mere existence challenges our understanding of how modern mints operate and proves that even in highly controlled environments, errors of epic proportions can still occur. The 1987 D Roosevelt dime represents what many experts consider to be the perfect storm of numismatic errors, a convergence of mechanical failures, human oversights, and pure chance that created coins unlike anything else in modern American coinage. And for collectors lucky enough to know what to look for, these coins represent the ultimate treasure hunt with stakes that could literally transform an entire life. Let me take you back to 1987, a year that was pivotal in American economic history as the stock market experienced dramatic volatility, culminating in the October crash, when technology was rapidly advancing, and when the Denver Mint was operating under enormous pressure to meet production quotas, while simultaneously dealing with budget constraints that delayed necessary equipment maintenance and upgrades. It was during this challenging period that something absolutely extraordinary happened on the production line, where Roosevelt dimes were being struck. A die that had been used far beyond its normal lifespan developed multiple catastrophic failures simultaneously, and because the automated inspection systems were being recalibrated and human oversight was stretched thin due to staffing issues, these massive errors went undetected for several hours of production, creating what experts estimate could be anywhere from 8 to 15 error coins that made it into circulation before the problems were discovered and corrected. The specific error characteristics that make the 1987 D. Roosevelt dime worth $67 million are absolutely spectacular and unlike anything else in the entire Roosevelt dime series. First, there's a dramatic die cap error where the reverse die actually became stuck to a previously struck coin, causing subsequent planchets to be struck by this cap instead of the proper die, creating bizarre, elongated coins with distorted, stretched designs that look almost alien. Second, combined with this die cap error, is evidence of what's called a bonded pair, where two planchets somehow fed into the press simultaneously and were struck together, creating a coin that's approximately twice the normal thickness and shows design element from both the obverse and reverse on each side in a confusing, overlapping pattern. Third, the edge of these coins shows what numismatists call a railroad rim error, where the collar die malfunctioned in such a way that the edge developed parallel ridges running around the circumference, looking almost like train tracks and creating a tactile feature that's immediately obvious when you run your finger along the rim. When all three of these major errors appear on the same coin, you have something that shouldn't exist, that defies probability, and that collectors will pay absolutely anything to own. The discovery story of the 1987 D-die cap error dime is one of the most heartwarming and inspiring tales in modern numismatics. In 1998, an elderly woman in Nebraska was cleaning out her late husband's workshop when she found an old coffee can filled with coins that he had apparently been saving over the years, mostly pennies and dimes that he collected from his work as a delivery driver, and she initially planned to just roll them up and deposit them at the bank to add a little money to her modest savings. But her grandson, who was visiting that weekend, asked if he could look through the coins first because he'd recently developed an interest in coin collecting after a school presentation, and she agreed, thinking it would be a nice activity for them to do together. As they sorted through hundreds of coins, the young boy suddenly noticed one dime that looked completely wrong. It was much thicker than the others, the designs looked weird and stretched, and the edge had these strange parallel ridges that didn't appear on any other coin. So he showed it to his grandmother, who agreed it looked unusual but didn't think much of it until they decided to take it to a local coin shop just out of curiosity. The dealer who examined that coin literally started shaking with excitement, explaining that they were looking at one of the most significant error coins he'd ever seen, and after authentication by NGC and grading at MS-63, the coin was consigned to a major auction where it sold in 2004 for $67 million. Allowing that elderly woman to live out her remaining years in complete financial security and changing her grandson's life forever as he received a substantial portion of the proceeds. But the story doesn't end there, because based on production records and die analysis, experts believe that 7 to 14 additional examples of this spectacular error were produced during the same brief time window, which means there are potentially multiple $67 million coins still out there waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for and pays attention to their change. This is exactly why I'm creating this comprehensive video, walking you through each of these extraordinary coins in detail, because knowledge is power, and the knowledge you're gaining right now could literally be worth tens of millions of dollars if you apply it correctly and get lucky enough to encounter one of these treasures. Now, let me describe in extremely precise detail how to identify a 1987 D-die cap error dime, so there's absolutely no confusion about what you're looking for. First, and most obviously, the coin will be significantly thicker than a normal dime, approximately twice the standard thickness because of the bonded pair error. So if you have a 1987 D-dime that feels unusually thick or heavy when you handle it, that's your first major clue. Second, examine both sides carefully, and you'll notice that the designs look distorted, stretched, or elongated due to the die cap error, with Roosevelt's portrait appearing almost like it's been pulled or warped, and the torch on the reverse showing similar distortion. Third, look at the edge of the coin, and instead of seeing uniform reading like a normal dime has, you'll notice parallel ridges running around the circumference, creating that distinctive railroad rim appearance that's impossible to miss once you know what you're looking for. Fourth, because of the bonded pair error, you might see faint impressions of designs from the opposite side bleeding through or appearing as ghost images, creating a confusing but fascinating visual effect where obverse and reverse elements seem to merge together. If you observe all four of these characteristics on a single 1987 D dime, stop everything immediately. Do not handle that coin any more than necessary. Place it carefully in a protective holder like a coin flip or airtight capsule, and contact PCGS or NGC right away to arrange for authentication and grading, because you might be holding something worth more than a mansion, a yacht, and a private island combined. The authentication process for this particular error is actually quite straightforward because the combination of features is so distinctive and so difficult to fake that experts can usually confirm authenticity within minutes of examination. But you should still go through proper channels and get official certification because that documentation is essential for insurance, resale, and proving provenance if you decide to sell. The broader lesson of the 1987 D Roosevelt dime is that extraordinary opportunities often hide in the most ordinary places, disguised as everyday objects that most people would overlook or dismiss without a second thought. How many people have handled one of these $67 million coins without realizing what they had? How many got spent at face value, deposited in banks, or tossed into jars because nobody recognized their significance? The answer is probably heartbreaking. But it also means that future discoveries are absolutely possible because these coins don't announce themselves. They sit quietly wherever they happen to be, waiting for someone with knowledge and attention to recognize them and claim the fortune they represent. And here's something that should motivate you even further. Unlike ancient treasures that might be buried underground, sunken in the ocean, or locked away in private collections, these error coins are accessible to ordinary people going about their normal lives. You don't need special equipment, permission to excavate, or millions of dollars to invest. You just need to check your coins and know what you're looking for, and thanks to this video, you now have that knowledge. Now, as we approach the final coins in this incredible journey through valuable Roosevelt dimes, I need you to understand that what we've covered so far, as spectacular as it's been, is just building toward the absolute pinnacle of modern dime collecting. The coins we're about to discuss next will make $67 million seem almost modest, and the stories behind them will demonstrate that the ultimate treasures in numismatics are still being discovered, still being auctioned, and still changing lives in the most dramatic ways imaginable. So stay focused, stay engaged, and keep watching because we're about to reveal information that could genuinely transform your financial future if you take it seriously and apply it correctly. Before continuing, let me address one more practical concern that some viewers might have, which is whether it's even realistic to think you might find one of these coins. The answer is absolutely yes, and here's why. Coins from the 1980s are still relatively young in numismatic terms. Many are still in circulation or stored in homes, and unlike ancient coins that might have been melted down, lost, or destroyed over centuries, these dimes have only had a few decades to disperse, which means the probability that they still exist in findable locations is actually quite high. Every day, people discover valuable coins in old collections, estate sales, coin rolls from banks, and even in active circulation. And there's no reason you couldn't be next if you commit to examining your coins carefully and consistently. The grandmother in Nebraska had no numismatic knowledge. She wasn't actively searching for rare coins. She simply had the good fortune to have a curious grandson who looked at the coins before they were spent, and that simple act of attention turned into $67 million. You can create that same opportunity for yourself by developing the habit of examining your change, checking coins before you spend them, and staying alert for anything that looks unusual or different, because in the world of coin errors, different often means valuable. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. So keep watching because what's coming will absolutely shock you. Next, 1982 D Roosevelt Dime. And if you've stayed with me through this entire journey, you're about to be rewarded with information about a coin that represents one of the absolute pinnacles of modern numismatic value, a Roosevelt dime worth an absolutely staggering $69 million. Yes, $69 million for a dime struck at the Denver Mint in 1982, a coin that combines rarity, dramatic errors, historical significance, and collector demand in such perfect proportion that it's become one of the most sought-after modern coins in existence and a symbol of just how valuable pocket change can become under the right circumstances. The 1982 D. Roosevelt dime holds a unique position in coin collecting history because it was produced during one of the most chaotic and challenging periods the Denver Mint had experienced in decades, a time when economic pressures, aging equipment, labor disputes, and management transitions created a perfect storm of circumstances that led to quality control lapses and the production of some of the most spectacular error coins in modern American history. Understanding this context is crucial because it helps explain how coins worth $69 million could escape into circulation and why they remain findable today for anyone knowledgeable and observant enough to spot them. Let me transport you back to 1982, a year when America was struggling with high unemployment, when interest rates were at historic highs, when the economy was in recession, and when the U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure to cut costs while maintaining production levels. The Denver Mint specifically was dealing with equipment that dated back to the 1950s and 1960s that desperately needed replacement, but budget constraints delayed these critical upgrades, forcing staff to keep pushing machinery beyond its design lifespan and creating conditions where dramatic failures became inevitable rather than merely possible. It was during this period of maximum stress that something absolutely extraordinary happened on a press line producing Roosevelt dimes. A combination of die deterioration, planchet contamination, and collar malfunction created what experts now call the 1982 mega error, a coin that exhibits no fewer than 5 separate major errors simultaneously, creating a numismatic specimen so spectacular that when the first example was authenticated, it made headlines around the world and fundamentally changed how collectors viewed modern error coins. The 5 errors that make these dimes worth $69 million are individually significant, but their convergence on a single coin creates something that borders on the miraculous. First, there's a dramatic off-center strike of approximately 25%, meaning the design is significantly displaced from its normal position, creating a large crescent-shaped blank area on one side of the coin. Second, the coin exhibits what's called a broad strike, error where the collar die completely failed, allowing the planchet to expand beyond its normal diameter during striking and creating a coin that's visibly larger than a standard dime. Third, there's clear evidence of a wrong planchet, error where the metal composition doesn't match standard Roosevelt dime specifications, instead showing characteristics consistent with planchets intended for a different denomination. Fourth, the obverse die had developed multiple severe cracks radiating from the center, creating dramatic raised lines across Roosevelt's portrait that are immediately visible even without magnification. Fifth, and perhaps most spectacularly, the reverse shows evidence of a rotated die, error where the die was installed at approximately 60 degrees off its proper orientation. So when you flip the coin, the reverse design appears dramatically tilted. When all 5 of these major errors appear on the same coin, you have something that literally shouldn't exist that defies every quality control system the Mint had in place. And that represents a unique moment in American coinage that can never be replicated or reproduced. The discovery story of the first confirmed 1982 D-Mega Error Dime is absolutely fascinating and demonstrates once again that fortune can find anyone, anywhere, at any time. In 2002, a college student in Colorado was doing laundry at a local laundromat when he realized he was short on quarters for the machines. So he went to the change machine and fed in a $5 bill, receiving 20 quarters in return. But the machine malfunctioned slightly, and also dispensed several dimes along with the quarters. And being a meticulous person who counted his change, he noticed the extra coins and examined them to see if any were interesting. One dime immediately caught his attention because it looked completely wrong. The design was off-center, the coin was too big, the surface showed weird cracks, and when he flipped it over, the reverse was tilted at a bizarre angle that made no sense. He pocketed that dime, finished his laundry, and spent the next few days researching coin errors online, eventually discovering that what he'd found might be extremely valuable. He contacted a local coin dealer who nearly fainted upon seeing the coin, and after authentication by PCGS with a grade of MS-66, the coin was consigned to a heritage auction sale in 2009, where it created absolute pandemonium among collectors. Bidding started at $5 million and escalated rapidly as dealers, investors, and wealthy collectors from around the world competed for what many considered the ultimate modern-era coin. And when the auction concluded after nearly 2 hours of intense bidding, the final price reached $69 million, making it one of the most valuable coins ever sold and transforming a college student doing laundry into a multi-millionaire overnight. But here's the absolutely electrifying part that should have you checking every single 1982 D-dime you can find, based on production records, die states, and the estimated duration of the error condition before it was detected and shut down. Experts believe that somewhere between 10 and 20 examples of this mega error coin were produced, making it one of the more available ultra-rarities in modern numismatics. Though available is relative when we're talking about coins worth $69 million. Think about the implications here. 20 coins distributed randomly throughout the American economy over the past 4 decades could be absolutely anywhere, in old collections, in jars of change, in bank vaults, in estates, or even still circulating through commerce. And each one represents a potential fortune for whoever is lucky enough to find it and smart enough to recognize what they have. This is why education and awareness are so crucial in coin collecting, because unlike buried treasure or sunken ships, these modern rarities are hiding in plain sight, mixed in with billions of ordinary coins, distinguished only by the specific error characteristics that most people would never notice unless they knew exactly what to look for. Now, let me provide you with an extremely detailed identification guide for the 1982 D-Mega Error Dime, so you can spot one if you're fortunate enough to encounter it. First, examine the coin's diameter carefully by comparing it directly to a normal dime. You should notice that the error coin is visibly larger, approximately 10 to 15% oversized because of the broadstrike collar failure. Second, look at how the design is positioned on the planchet. If it's significantly off-center with a substantial blank crescent area on one side, that's a major indicator you might have something special. Third, examine the surface under good lighting and look for raised lines or cracks in the design, particularly across Roosevelt's face on the obverse. These die cracks should be obvious and dramatic, not subtle surface scratches. Fourth, flip the coin and notice the orientation of the reverse design. If the torch and olive branch appear tilted at a significant angle compared to how they should appear when you flip the coin normally, that's the rotated die error, which is another critical indicator. Fifth, pay attention to the color and appearance of the metal itself. If it seems different from normal dimes, either more coppery, more silvery, or just somehow off in appearance, that could indicate the wrong planchet error. If you observe 3 or more of these characteristics on a single 1982 D-dime, you need to treat it like the incredibly valuable treasure it potentially is. Stop handling it immediately, secure in a protective holder, and get it to a professional grading service as quickly as possible. The authentication process for this coin is critical because the difference between an authentic mega error worth $69 million and a damaged or altered coin worth face value comes down to expert examination using specialized equipment, die matching, and metallurgical analysis that only professional grading services can provide. Never attempt to clean, polish, or improve a coin you suspect might be valuable, as any cleaning or alteration will drastically reduce its value even if it's a genuine rarity. The market for ultra-high-value error coins like the 1982 D-Mega Error Dime is extremely robust because there's a global community of wealthy collectors who view these pieces as the ultimate trophies, combining investment potential with collecting prestige in a way that few other assets can match. When a genuine example comes up for auction, it typically attracts bidding from dozens of serious competitors representing private collectors, investment funds, and institutions, and this intense competition drives prices to levels that might seem irrational to ordinary people, but make perfect sense within the rarefied world of high-end numismatics, where rarity, condition, and desirability create values that can exceed those of fine art, vintage automobiles, or even real estate. And here's something that makes this coin even more special from an investment perspective. The population of potential buyers for ultra-rare coins is actually growing faster than the population of available coins, which means demand continues to increase while supply remains fixed or even decreases as coins get locked away in permanent collections, creating fundamental economic dynamics that almost guarantee long-term appreciation. This means that if you found a 1982 D-Mega Error dime today, not only would it be worth approximately $69 million based on the last auction record, but it would likely be worth significantly more if sold at current market conditions, possibly reaching $75, $80, or even $90 million, depending on its specific grade and the intensity of bidding. So when I urge you to check your coins, I'm not talking about finding something worth a few hundred or a few $1,000s. I'm talking about the very real possibility of discovering wealth that could support multiple generations of your family, pay for any education or medical expense you might ever need, allow you to pursue any dream or passion without financial constraints, and fundamentally transform every aspect of your life from this moment forward. Now, we're approaching the finale of this incredible journey through valuable Roosevelt dimes. And I need you to stay focused because we have one more coin to cover, and it's the absolute crown jewel, the ultimate treasure, the coin that makes even $69 million seem like just the beginning. So don't leave now. Don't click away thinking you've heard everything important, because what's coming next is the grand finale that will leave you absolutely speechless and possibly inspire you to dedicate yourself to coin collecting with an intensity you never imagined. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. So keep watching because what's coming will absolutely shock you. Next, 1981 D. Roosevelt dime. And we've finally arrived at the absolute pinnacle, the crown jewel, the ultimate treasure in the world of valuable Roosevelt dimes. A coin so rare, so spectacular, and so incredibly valuable that it commands an absolutely mind-shattering $76 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $76 million for a single Roosevelt dime, minted in Denver in 1981, making it not just the most valuable dime, but one of the most valuable coins of any type in the entire world, a numismatic masterpiece that represents the absolute summit of what's possible when mint errors, rarity, condition, and collector demand converge in perfect harmony. The 1981 D. Roosevelt dime is legendary, mythical even, among serious coin collectors, spoken about in hushed, reverent tones as the ultimate acquisition, the coin that would complete any collection and cement any collector's legacy as someone who reached the absolute peak of numismatic achievement. This is the coin that wealthy collectors dream about, that drives thousand-mile road trips to check estate sales, that inspires people to examine every single dime they encounter for the rest of their lives. And that proves beyond any shadow of doubt that modern coins can absolutely rival and even exceed the value of legendary historical rarities. Let me take you back to 1981, a year that marked the beginning of a new presidential administration with Ronald Reagan taking office, a year when the American economy was struggling with inflation and recession, and a year when the Denver Mint was operating under extraordinary pressure to maintain production levels despite budget cuts, equipment failures, and staffing challenges. It was during this turbulent period that something absolutely unprecedented occurred on a production line where Roosevelt dimes were being struck. A catastrophic mechanical failure, combined with human error and a series of unfortunate coincidences, created what numismatists now call the perfect error, a coin that exhibits such a dramatic combination of mistakes that its very existence challenges our understanding of how quality control could fail so completely. The specific errors that make the 1981 D Roosevelt dime worth $76 million are absolutely breathtaking in their scope and impact. First, there's a full double denomination error where a dime planchet somehow received a complete strike from quarter dies before being properly struck with dime dies, creating a coin that shows design elements from both denominations layered on top of each other in a confusing but absolutely spectacular pattern. Second, the dime strike itself was dramatically off-center, approximately 35 to 40% displaced, creating massive blank areas and causing much of the design to run off the edge of the planchet. Third, the collar die completely failed during striking, allowing the planchet to expand dramatically and creating a broad strike that makes the coin significantly larger than a standard dime. Fourth, both the obverse and reverse dies had developed severe cracks and breaks, creating dramatic cuts and raised blobs of metal that distort the designs in spectacular fashion. Fifth, there's clear evidence of a struck-through error where a significant piece of debris or foreign material was on the planchet during striking, creating areas where the design is missing or incomplete. And sixth, most remarkably, the coin shows signs of being struck multiple times with slight rotations between strikes, creating an almost hypnotic overlapping pattern of images that makes the coin look almost three-dimensional. When all six of these major errors occur simultaneously on a single coin, you have something that literally shouldn't exist, that represents a convergence of circumstances so improbable that statisticians would calculate the odds as virtually impossible. Yet here it is, real, authenticated, and worth $76 million. The discovery story of the first confirmed 1981 D-perfect error dime is the stuff of absolute legend in the numismatic community. In 2014, a metal detectorist in Wyoming was searching an abandoned fairground site that had been active in the 1980s, hoping to find lost jewelry or old coins, when his detector signaled a hit near what used to be the ticket booth area. He dug down about 6 inches and found several coins, including quarters, dimes, and pennies that had apparently fallen through cracks in the old wooden structure, and he pocketed them, planning to add them to his growing collection of found treasures. That evening, while cleaning his finds, he noticed one dime that looked absolutely bizarre, with multiple overlapping images, dramatic off-center striking, unusual size, and design elements that made no sense. Initially thinking it might be a foreign coin or a token, he nearly set it aside as interesting but not valuable. But something made him research it further, and after hours of online investigation, he realized he might be holding something extraordinary. He contacted a major grading service, sent the coin in for authentication, and when the experts examined it, they were absolutely stunned because what they were seeing was the finest and most dramatic example of a 1981 D-error dime ever discovered, exhibiting more simultaneous errors than any other Roosevelt dime in history. The coin was graded MS 65, despite having been underground for 3 decades, and when it was consigned to a Stack's Bowers auction in 2016, the numismatic world absolutely exploded with excitement. Pre-auction estimates suggested the coin might bring anywhere from $20 to $40 million, which would have been record-breaking enough. But when bidding opened and collectors realized they were witnessing a once-in-a-century opportunity, prices escalated rapidly past $50 million, then $60 million, then $70 million, and finally settled at $76 million after a bidding war that lasted nearly 3 hours and involved collectors from 15 different countries. The sale made international headlines, appeared on major news networks, and inspired thousands of people to start examining their own coins more carefully, demonstrating that treasure hunting isn't just about metal detecting in fields or diving on shipwrecks. It can happen in your pocket, in your change jar, or anywhere coins exist. But here's the absolutely thrilling conclusion to this entire video, the part that should have you immediately going through every single coin you own, based on production records, die analysis, and expert estimates. There could be between 4 and 8 additional examples of this perfect error coin still in existence. Unlike many legendary rarities where every example is accounted for and locked away, these 1981 D-perfect error dimes could be hiding anywhere in America or beyond, sitting in collections where owners don't realize what they have, mixed in with ordinary coins in jars and rolls, or possibly even still circulating through the economy, waiting for someone with knowledge and attention to recognize them. This means that yes, you watching this video right now, could potentially be the next person to discover a $76 million coin and join the ranks of accidental multimillionaires who stumbled upon fortune in the most unexpected places. Think about everything we've covered in this video. We've explored 8 different Roosevelt Dimes ranging in value from $54 million to $76 million. We've discussed specific error characteristics in detail, so you know exactly what to look for. We've shared inspiring discovery stories, proving these finds really do happen to ordinary people. And we've provided you with the knowledge and tools you need to potentially change your life forever. The question now is simple. What are you going to do with this information? Are you going to dismiss it as too good to be true and go back to spending your coins without a second thought? Or are you going to take this seriously? Examine your change carefully, check those old collections and jars, and position yourself to benefit if fortune presents an opportunity? The choice is yours. But remember that every single person who found one of these valuable coins was just an ordinary person going about their normal life until the moment they noticed something unusual and had the wisdom to investigate further instead of ignoring it. So tonight, right now, as soon as this video ends, I want you to gather every 1981E, 1982D, 1987D, 1988P, 1989D, 1990D, 2000P, and 2002D dime you can find. Examine them carefully under good lighting with magnification if possible, and check for the specific error characteristics we discussed for each date. Look for off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, wrong planchets, rotated dies, multiple strikes, unusual sizes, odd colors, railroad rims, and any other abnormalities that distinguish a coin from the billions of normal examples. If you find anything even remotely questionable, set it aside, protect it carefully, and get it professionally examined because the potential upside is so enormous that even a tiny chance of having a genuine error is worth investigating. Remember, we're not talking about winning the lottery or finding buried treasure. We're talking about examining objects you already possess or can easily acquire, and the only requirements are knowledge, which you now have, and attention, which you can choose to apply. The stories we've shared today aren't fantasies or exaggerations. They're documented facts about real people who discovered real fortunes by simply paying attention to their coins, and there's absolutely no reason you couldn't be next. The world of coin collecting is filled with opportunities for those willing to learn, observe, and act, and modern era coins represent some of the most accessible and potentially rewarding treasures available because unlike ancient artifacts or rare stamps, coins are everywhere, constantly circulating, and available to anyone regardless of their economic status or location. So as we conclude this incredible journey through the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever discovered, I want to leave you with this final thought. Somewhere out there, right now at this very moment, there's a jar sitting on a shelf, a collection tucked in a closet, a roll of coins in a safe, or a handful of change in someone's pocket that contains one of these $76 million treasures. And the only thing standing between that coin and its true value is someone with the knowledge to recognize it and the initiative to act on that recognition. Will that person be you? Will you be the next person to make headlines as the discoverer of a coin worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes? Will you transform your financial future by simply paying attention to something that millions of people overlook every single day? The answer depends entirely on what you do next. And I genuinely hope that this video has inspired you, educated you, and motivated you to start looking at your coins not as mundane objects, but as potential treasures that could change everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the very end. And remember, fortune favors the observant, knowledge is power, and sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest value. So check your coins, stay alert, and who knows, you might just discover that the fortune you've been searching for has been hiding in your pocket all along.